In the 34 days since Donald Trump has become president of the United States, there has been mass chaos in the federal government. From mass purgings in public health departments to laying off thousands of federal workers, the administration is absolutely disastrous. But they're not here for democracy, they're here for an autocracy, an authoritarian, oligarchic, Christian government takeover. That's exactly what's happening here. But millions of Americans are proving to be a part of the resistance movement to stop this brazen takeover of the United States federal government, turning it from a democracy into an authoritarian government.
No Trump! No KKK! No fascist USA! No Trump! No KKK! No fascist USA!
At an imperative moment right now, many Americans are feeling depressed and hopeless. But we do remember words such as these recently by former Vice President Kamala Harris at the NAACP Awards.
This chapter will be written not simply by whoever occupies the Oval Office, nor by the wealthiest among us. The American story will be written by you, written by us, by we the people. I thank you. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
There is no law, and there is no order, and there are no consequences. Nobody is held to account.
The end result of the fraud and abuse that has been discovered already.
Voters in West Bend expressing their frustrations today with their congressman, Republican Scott Fitzgerald.
We cannot just sit back and wait.
Right.
Things are happening at warp speed, illegal things that are having consequences right now. And we need you.
Yeah.
Elon Musk is ignoring a bunch of financial stuff. He is in the Treasury. He is trying to get access to our tax returns. Are you going to subpoena him at some point? Or after you're done with the budget or whatever, are you willing to use your subpoena power to say, Musk, come in here, stand in front of Congress, and answer some hard questions? That is how you can hold them to account.
All you want, I can't understand 10 people, let alone 100 people.
It's your job to control the budget, not the president. And you are doing us a disservice to set that down and not stand up for us. And
litigating court. You don't think I'm going to stand up for you? Stand up. So if we're going to have a town hall, and I'm going to go and stand in front of you and take your questions and try to answer them as honestly as I can, then let's do that, okay? But if you're going to just yell at me, that's not going to be an effective town hall.
I'm a registered Republican voter and retired active Army officer. How can you tell me that Doge, with some college whiz kids from a computer terminal in Washington, D.C., without even getting out into the field, after about a week or maybe two, has determined that it's okay to cut veterans' benefits?
I think a couple things. Let me give you an example. Did you know that the VA was in charge of payments for illegals for housing? Basically, the VA.
No, I'd like for you to send me. Could you send me that reference so I could research that? Because no, I'm not aware of that. And I would tell you that that's a red herring, a false flag. If you're throwing that kind of political stuff up, trying to cut veterans' benefits, that's very alarming to me.
When will you stand up to them and say that is enough?
The end result of the fraud and abuse that has been discovered already.
But what is going on right now today
is the House of Representatives and the Senate are totally abdicating their responsibility to be checked on the executive. You stand here and say, I'm not sure about that, or I'm not sure about that. You put up, frankly, some of these slides are very misleading. Let's talk about the Trump tax cut. How much of that deficit in that jump from 22 up was the tax cuts to the incredibly rich people of the world who are now in our White House and dismantling our government? You are an attorney. You are an officer of the court in addition to swearing an oath to our Constitution. And yet, well, you and so many of your colleagues are just sitting around watching. Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens next month. Oh, those workers have rights. And yes, they've been violated. So now they're getting processed. Our courts can't handle this. These people have planned this for years, and they are doing it. It is a fire hose of action, illegal actions that even you acknowledge right here. But we're just going to let the courts sort it out. There won't be a country left to run, sir, if you guys just sit back and are afraid of a primary.
Quote, there won't be a country to run if you and Republicans just sit back and are afraid of a primary. So the mass resistance movement, it's not just in protests, but it's actually citizens taking action, taking to town halls to protest what their elected Republican officials are doing effectively in being complicit for the downfall of the United States government. For the United States government effectively capitulating into an authoritarian oligarchic takeover by Elon Musk and Donald Trump. That's exactly what's happening here. And there is this massive resistance here in town halls and people pushing back saying, hell no, we're not going into this. We are not doing this. I want to read you here this from my book on resistance. Essentially, it's rule number 5 because this is absolutely important to what exactly happened this week. Quote, pay attention to what's happening in your state, city, county, and not just the national level. Watch local news, do your research, and stay informed. Ensure that you are reading and researching beyond the mainstream media headlines. The worst of what's happening will either be underreported or transpiring quietly, while the administration or mainstream media seeks to focus on something rather nonsensical or less offensive. As MSNBC host Rachel Maddow once said, watch what they do, not what they say. That requires you as a citizen to be an investigator, dig deeper, read longer articles. Watch documentaries while researching, and the wealth of information available to us is still legal and accessible. End quote. We talked about here on the Jeremiah Patterson Show earlier today how what's happening right now with the purging of public health officials amid a bird flu epidemic and the rise of measles in Texas and New Mexico and tuberculosis in Kansas, we talked about how that is a major situation right now that's getting relative attention. There are other things that the Trump administration and Elon Musk are doing that they don't want you to know about, but in a moment like this, it requires you as a private citizen to become effectively an investigator. Research what's going on, read longer articles. You're protesting, you're demanding change about what they're doing to the government, but what else are they doing? What else do you need to raise hell with your elected members of Congress about? They're going after the IRS. Effectively, delayed tax returns could be something that we see this season. They are firing the nuclear scientists, and then, oh wait, they oversee the nuclear stockpile? Oh crap, we have to rehire them. They're firing the USDA scientists that are in charge of bird flu, and then, oh wait, those USDA scientists were charged and tasked with investigating bird flu? Oh no, we have to rehire them. The incompetence of this administration is staggering. They are trying to delete the federal government. They are trying to get rid of it and install a dictatorship. They are trying to install an oligarchy. As stuff like this is posted on the White House official social media account, Donald Trump brandishing himself as a king. Long live the king. Turns out millions of Americans don't want an oligarchy, or a monarchy, or a dictatorship. They want democracy because they actually like it. They get the right to say things and to petition, and to have a federal government that listens, and to have elected officials that listen to their constituents, where they have the right of grievance. They have the right to voice their opposition. That mass resistance is happening right now on a major scale that I'm not quite sure a lot of people now are getting into this movement, which is absolutely inspiring. But in regard to what Kamala Harris said there, former Vice President Kamala Harris, another thing that she talked about in her speech essentially is how, although freedom can be won, it is at the cost of vigilance, staying vigilant. That is why I wrote about defending our institutions in my book, Resistance, which I really recommend that you get. The book is called Resistance, A Strategic Guide on How to Fight Back, Defend Democracy, and Avoid a Trump Dictatorship. It has 7 rules on how to get through this moment. It is available. The link for it is right there if you're interested in purchasing it. But I talked about in this book here, essentially, why we all need to stand up. Why, effectively, we need to be in this moment together. Because the only way to defeat authoritarianism is mass resistance. And that's not just going to take the grassroots resistance from the American people, but also the assistance by the Democratic Party, which we have been seeing more of in recent weeks. I've been doing reporting on that here on the Jeremiah Patterson Show. We did a full documentary on that. Be sure to go back and watch that if you have not already. It's part of our Resistance series. This is part 3. There is a rise of authoritarianism and fascism all over the world, including here in the United States, and even in some states. We're going to be covering that very soon here on the show. But it's important to know that the resistance is loud and clear. People are not doing nothing. They are not capitulating and isolating and letting their democracy die and wither. They are actively getting up and fighting back. And that is something worth covering, because it is inspiring. And it is also worth noting here that you are not alone in your feelings of depression and anger and being pissed off. Thousands, hundreds of thousands more people are. And they are actively protesting in the streets, but also doing something about that anger, about that frustration. We all should take lessons from that book.